Jai Hind everyone. I am Achintya Pandey as Assistant Professor in IT Department at Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College. Today I will explore the concept of inheritance used in object-oriented programming system, right? So we'll explore the concept of inheritance. See, the idea of code reusability comes through the concept of inheritance, how we could reuse when it is required, whenever it is required. So the inheritance is one of the very important feature of object-oriented programming systems. Okay, so we have two languages of associated with the object-oriented language. Okay, so there is a object-based programming language, and second one is object-oriented programming language. Okay, so in object-based programming language, it support programming with objects, means you can create as many objects as require of some particular class. Okay, and this support programming with object, and there is one feature, second language which is based on object oriented is object oriented programming language. So in object based programming language, the concept of polymorphism and inheritance, it doesn't support, right? Inheritance and dynamic binding, inheritance and dynamic binding in object based programming language do not support. Okay, but in object oriented programming language, the features of all object oriented it gets supported, right? Like so many features like object, class, inheritance and all those things support in object oriented programming language. Today I will mainly focus on inheritance. What is inheritance? What types of inheritance? How this, and a little bit programming which we have written here in C++ we will explore. Okay, so just go to review the object-oriented programming. So it is a language which vary but generally support all the following features, that is data abstraction or encapsulation, define types with an interface and an implementation. Okay, encapsulation means wrapping up data and function into a single unit. Okay, and that single unit is called class. Okay, so inheritance, classes can inherit data or behavior. Okay, so what is inheritance? So inheritance is basically it is a mechanism, okay, which allow a class, a new class which can inherit the property of another class. Okay, so this new class sometimes called subclass, sometimes called derived class, and the existing class is called base class. Okay, base class or super class. Okay, so right. So inheritance is basically, it is a mechanism, and by that mechanism it allows some new class to inherit the property of another class. So how we are going to inherit, how the property and behavior, so we will see. Okay, then we have polymorphism. The polymorphism allow you to create a hierarchy of classes with a common interface. Okay, so inheritance is nothing. So the capability of a class to derive property and characteristic from another class is called inheritance. Inheritance is one of the most important feature of object-oriented programming. It is a feature or a process in which new classes are created from the existing class, right? And the new class is created is called derived class or child class, and the existing class is known as base class or parent class or super class. Okay, so the derived class now is said to be inherited from the base class. The class which we are going to create it, okay, they will inherit the property of existing class, base class. Okay, so when we say derived class inherit the base class, it means the derived class inherit all the property of the base class without changing the property of base class, and may add new feature to its own. So these new features in the derived class will not affect the base class. The derived class is a specialized class for the base class. Okay, so just categorize the class, subclass. The class that inherit property from another class is called subclass or derived class. Okay, superclass is the class which whose property are inherited by a subclass is called base class. sometimes we can say parent class even, okay, depending on the context, okay. Okay, so for example, we can see with this, say vehicle is a class and bus, car and truck are its a derived class. So of course, the bus class will inherit all the many property from vehicle class, car will inherit the property of vehicle class, okay. Okay, I mean say bus class will have its own exclusive feature which may not have car, but it will inherit all the property, it can inherit all the property of vehicle class. So we may categorize, I mean the problem into subcategory and all that, and by using the concept of inheritance we can we do more appropriately, okay. So using inheritance we have to write the function only one time instead of 3 times, right, okay. Suppose there are bus, car and truck, and we know that they all inherit the property of vehicle class. So there is no need to, I mean, include all those code which is already in vehicle class. It will simply be available once its object will be created, okay, simply. So so this is the idea of reusability, how a code can be reused in so many different classes, okay. So by that, that's why this is very important feature of object oriented language, okay. So this is the syntax. Here we have written some syntax, some programming using C++, okay. So for creating a subclass that is inherited from the base class, we have to follow the following syntax, okay. We just write the keyword class and the class name, and we will use simply colon, and then access is specified. There are 3 access is specified. You can use public, private or protected, and then base class name, okay, and then you write the code of that new class, okay. So class is basically keyword to create a new class, derived class name, name of the new class which will inherit the base class. Access is specified, either private, there are 3 access is specified, private, public or protected. If neither is specified, means it by default it will be the private, right? Private is taken by default. Suppose if there is no I mean access is specified mention especially before the class name, okay, then it will by default private, okay. And the base class name is name of the base class. So that we will see. For example, this is ABC class and this is the XYZ. So XYZ will be already existing class. So this become the super class, or sometimes you can say base class more appropriately. It is the base class and this is the new class. So ABC is going to inherit the property of XYZ also, right? So and you have mentioned private, okay. So this is called private derivations. So access is specified, okay. This will restrict the, I mean, sharing behavior of, it will restrict how it will restrict basically the sharing of data and function or whatever inside the XYZ, okay. Suppose if it is private, then everything, I mean, data and function all becomes the private, okay. So they cannot access by simply creating the object of this derived class, that we will see later, okay. Similarly, here we have class ABCs and this is access public. So XYZ is basically here the base class and ABC is a new class, and there are 3 way, there are basically 4 way you can write like this way. So, see here, simply we have mentioned ABC colon XYZ. So you have not mentioned private, public, protected. So compiler by default will assume it is the private. Okay, so when a base class is privately inherited, like in the first exam, this one, okay. So when a base class is privately inherited by the derived class, public members of the base class become the private member of derived class, and therefore the public member of the base class can only be accessed, and therefore the public member of the base class can only be accessed by the member function of the derived class. They are inaccessible to the objects of the derived class. This is a very important thing. So once you inherit the base class as a private inherit, okay. So this simply says that all the members are going to become the private. So once it become private, only the member function, okay, only the member function. Member functions means the member function will be allowed to access these private data, which is the simply I mean class characteristics, okay. So they are inaccessible. You cannot even call, in general you simply create the object of derived class, and by the object you access say public data, public member functions in general, okay. So those all become private once you inherit privately the base class. So once become the private, then they cannot I mean invoked, and the function which even become in the public zone, I mean in the base class, they cannot be directly invoked because they become the private. So once they become the private, only the member function could access that, right. So that's telling, okay. So they are inaccessible to the object of derived class, okay. They are inaccessible to the object of the derived class. On the other hand, when the base class is publicly inherited by the derived class, public member of the base class also become the public member of the derived class. Therefore, the public member of the base class are accessible by the object of the derived class as well as the member function of the derived class. This is very important, okay. So mode of inheritance, there are three modes. One is public, private and protected, okay. So if we derive a subclass from a public base class, then the public member of the base class will become public in the derived class, and protected member of the base class will become protected in the derived class. Simple. You can just assume if we access private public, you can consider just like 1. If you multiply 1, then 1 multiply with anything, it becomes the 1. So 1 multiplied with private, that becomes private. 1 multiplied public, that becomes public. So simple, you can make assumptions that public is just like you are going to multiply with 1. Okay, so public remains public, protected remains protected, and private remains private. So next one is protected mode. If the mode of inheritance is protected, so if we are going to derive a subclass from a protected base class, then both public member and protected member of the base class will become protected in the derived class. And private you could consider just like 0. Once you multiply 0 with anything, that becomes 0. So private is just simple 0. So you just multiply 0 with say public, that become private. You multiply 0 with protected, that becomes 0, means private, because you are simply just assuming private as a 0. So when you multiply 0 with any number, that becomes the 0. When you multiply 1 with any number, that becomes the same number. So same numbers means be public, private, protected. They remain as it is, public, private, protected, when it is inherited public, okay. Or simply you can just see what it is written, right. Okay, so the important thing is that the private members in the base class cannot be directly accessed, okay. The private members in the base class cannot be directly accessed in the derived class, okay, while protected member can be directly accessed. For example, classes B, C and D all contain the variable X, Y and Z in the below example, okay. Okay, so here is simply by table we can just consider what it is. So base class member access specifier, this is the base class member access specifier, okay, and this is the type of inheritance. So if base class member access specifier is public, so C, public remains public, protected remains protected, private remains private. C, private, once the base class access is private, so this become not accessible, okay, this become not accessible, this become not accessible, okay. Similarly protected, so public becomes protected, protected become protected, and private always remains private, okay. So by in any case, private member of any base class, they will not be inherited, I mean they will not be inherited in any way, right. Private data could only be accessed by the member function of that class only, okay. So private data cannot be inherited. If it could be inherited, then only by the functions, okay, of that class, okay. So these all are some types of inheritance. One is single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, multiple inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and hybrid inheritance. So just see the things. If it is single inheritance, means there is a simple a class, derived class, we simply inherit some base class. So this is the example of single inheritance. For example, this is the code. Suppose we have A, there is a class, and there is another, you are going to create a class B, and simply you are inheriting the base class A, okay. This is a simple program where vehicles, okay, the base class vehicle, you have made simple class, okay. You are simply writing simple one line code. This is a vehicle, and you are going to create a new class, derived class, that is car, which is going to inherit the vehicle class. So you can do like this. You have made simply object of car, okay, and by this obj you can access the vehicle as well as the car class, right. Next is multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance means if there is more than one base class, okay. If a class inherit more than one class, then this comes under the multiple inheritance, okay. So multiple inheritance is a feature of C++ where a class can inherit more than one class. So this comes under the multiple inheritance, okay. This is the example. Here we have say class B and class C, okay, and this particular new class A, which is going to inherit two base class B and C. So this comes under the multiple inheritance. Multiple means more than one base class, okay. A class which is going to inherit more than one base class, so this comes under the category multiple inheritance. Similarly, next one is the multi-level inheritance. Here we can see by the diagram, class A is going to inherit the feature of class B, which itself is going to inherit the feature of class C. Ultimately, class A inherit the C, okay. So this comes under the multi-level, more than one level, okay, inheritance. Simple. This is the one class. This B is going to inherit the C. Similarly, A is going to inherit B. So ultimately, A can inherit all the property of C, okay. Okay, this is hierarchical inherit. Hierarchical you can consider just like as a tree, hierarchy, okay. So this is a hierarchy, okay. This you may consider as a parent node. Simple, just like a structure, tree kind of structure comes under hierarchical inheritance. So B class is going to inherit G. Similarly, class A and C both, okay. Class A is going to inherit B as well as class C going to inherit B, okay. So more than one, two class is going to inherit a one base class, okay. Okay, two or more than even two, okay. So this comes under the hierarchical, just like tree structure, okay. A tree could have n number of node, and a node could have so many child. Even if it is binary, then it could have two, okay. This is the simple code of which implicate a hierarchical inheritance, simple, okay. Then one is hybrid inheritance. Hybrid inheritance means a class which combine more than two category of inheritance, okay. So this comes under the hierarchical inheritance. So hybrid inheritance. So hybrid inheritance is implemented by combining more than one type of inheritance. For example, you can see that this is the multi-level, okay, and this one is say hierarchical as well, and there is a class which is inheritance more than two. Is there any class where it could inherit more than two class? Okay, yes. This class is going to inherit class F as well, class G. So if a class which is going to inherit two or more than two types of inheritance, this comes under the hybrid inheritance, okay. So like this way, okay. So this is all about the inheritance. So by using the concept of inheritance, we could reuse the code, and simple you can write the code which we want to retain not yet cleared, and it may come say in future, what we can do, we simply create a new class, and we can simply inherit any base class which we require at that time. Okay. So this is all about the inheritance. It is the mechanism which inherit the property of another base class. Okay. So inheritance is basically, it is the mechanism which allow a class to inherit another class. That's all. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.